Okay, do somebody stay down here? I don't need to be up there at the pulpit, do I? I can just be down here. Okay, so we really miss you guys. We had church canceled last Sunday, and then Wednesday it was canceled. And I was pretty upset about that. I want to be here. I want to see you guys, and I want to have that touch from God. So I don't know about anybody else, but I am desperate for that. I am desperate for the touch of God in my life. And so today, when they announced that Jason and Nikki weren't going to be here, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to do it. Kyle and I are going to step up and we're going to lead this service, and it's going to be great. And we're going to give God the glory, and people are going to see, his power, and it's just going to be great. So this is a lesson about my dad. My dad died 6 years ago. And almost 6.5 years ago. And so this is the lesson that I did at his funeral, and I've done it for the youth group, and then I've done it for a podcast as well. So it's called Cheating Death, as you can see. So, okay, let's go to the next one. All right, so my daddy, as much as I love him and he was really great, he was also a sinner, okay? Everybody's a sinner, but my dad, really was kind of extra, and he had a saying that he's a man, not an angel, so he would always kind of joke like that. But sin just needs one little weakness to get into your life. And so the verse I have for that is James 1, verses 14 and 15. I'm going to read it to you. This is in the NASB. But each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it has run its course, brings forth death. And let me tell you, that was so true in my dad's life. He also says that pride comes before the fall. And so there was a time in his life when he felt like he was Bible answer man, and he got proud and boastful. And the way he describes it is that he got prideful like that, and he just fell flat on his face. And I mean, he found himself facing jail time because of this lust sin that he had allowed into his life. And then, as we see in the verse, then that leads to death. So the first time that he almost died was in the middle of his trial. So when we talk about that God loved us even when we were yet sinners, that is where he was. So go to the one about congestive heart failure so I can tell you what that is. When I was a baby, my dad was in the middle of his trial, and he came to my mom one day and said, "I can't breathe." And my mom's like, "Well, what do you want me to do about it? What do you want me to do? Go take a deep breath or something." And she goes a second time and says, "I'm really having trouble breathing." And she goes, "Just go in the corner and die. I don't care." The third time, he says, "Okay, look, I really can't breathe. Let's go to the hospital." So they take me to the babysitter, but his condition is getting worse, and so they end up calling an ambulance from the babysitter's house. Now, we lived out in the country, so it was half an hour to get to the hospital. So they're going in the ambulance, with the sirens and everything. And my mom's following them in the car, and she's praying. And she's not praying for healing. Okay, she's praying, "God, just let him die. Just let it be over. We won't have to go to court. All that. It'll all just be over." So they're going, and the ambulance turns the lights off. And so my mom says, "Okay, he died. It's over." And so then she just follows at normal speed to the hospital. So when he got to the hospital, they pronounced him dead on arrival. And they said he had congestive heart failure. And this is from Healthline, the actual definition. It occurs when your left ventricle doesn't properly pump blood out to your body. As the condition progresses, fluid can build up in your lungs, which makes breathing difficult. It was literally drowning in his own fluid. And so that's our lesson there, that the heart, the human heart, is deceitful above all things. Go to that one. You cannot trust your heart. You follow your heart, and you end up drowning in your own fluid, the stuff that's supposed to be good for your body. You end up drowning in it. So he's DOA. So my mom gets to the hospital a little bit later, and she walks in the door. You guys ready to hear about the spiritual warfare that my mom encountered when she walked into this hospital? So you know how when they're going to kill somebody through lethal injection or something and they cover their face? And so she said that she could feel it in the spiritual realm, but she could feel it physically, this black hood coming down over her face. She could feel it. And she could hear Satan in her ear saying, "I've got your husband, and I'm going to get your little girl next." That's me. And my mom knows that when you're having a demonic encounter, you are supposed to say, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." But she knew that she didn't have time to get all those words out before that hood was going to come over, because she knew that if it came down over her mouth, then she wasn't going to be able to talk. And so she threw the hospital doors open and she just says, "No!" And that went off of her face so fast. Because when you rebuke the devil, he flees. And she walked into that hospital, and everybody's kind of looking at her like, "What is wrong with you? What are you yelling about?" Do you know that I have had this prophesied over my life since I was a baby, that the devil had gotten my dad and that he was trying to get me? And so I've always had that I cannot let that happen. And so now here we are at this church and being the youth group leaders, and it is just so fulfilling to me. I feel like I'm fulfilling this prophecy that I've had in my life since then. All right, so our hearts will fail us. We established that. Daddy's dead at the hospital. My mom's sitting there trying to decide who she's going to tell first. She's going to tell his mom. She's going to tell his ex-wife. Who's she going to tell? And then as she's sitting there trying to decide what to do, the doctor comes out, walks up to her and says, "Are you Robin?" That's my mom's name. And she's looking at the doctor. She's like, "Yeah." But she's thinking, how does he know my name? Because it's not like they looked it up from the address, because they called the ambulance from the babysitter's house. So she's really confused of how he knows her name. And the doctor says, "The gentleman in there is asking for you." My mom's thinking, all the nurses were women. The only gentleman is my dad and her husband, and he's dead. So she says to the doctor, "The gentleman in there is dead." And the doctor goes, "Well, yes, ma'am. He was dead, but he just sat up and is asking for you." Can we clap for that? So that's the kind of God that I grew up with, knowing that he doesn't just heal, he doesn't just answer a prayer, he raises the dead when we're not even asking him to, when we've accepted it. Oh man, so anytime we have anything that we need to trust God for, we can do that. Okay, go to the first one, the first number. Okay, we talked about the sin. We talked about how it starts out small and ends up destroying your life. So that's what happened to him. He had lust. He made the wrong choice. And he continued to make it over and over. And then before he knew it, he found himself dying. And so he did go and confess what he had done. And he said to me that he knew that if he didn't confess what he had done, that God was just going to strike him dead. And so, which is kind of funny because then this did end up happening after he confessed. But he faced his consequences. He spent a year in jail. And he did lots of counseling of like re-entry stuff. And we never had a problem after that. So, when you really, truly are struggling with something and you finally give it to God and you don't try to hide it, God can free you from that. And that has been a big lesson for me recently. Like after he died, I learned more of the extent of his struggles. It was worse than I thought growing up. And so instead of taking that to think, oh, like my dad was this horrible person and I don't, want to care about him, instead of feeling like that, I felt like God delivered him from so much more. Look at how great God is to be able to deliver us from that. So no matter what it is, no matter how strong an addiction is, God can deliver you from that. All right, go to the one about the storm. Oh, I didn't read the verse. 1 Corinthians 5:6 says, your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump of dough? I thought that verse was really great because that brings in his whole thing about pride coming before the fall. So yeah, you should not boast. Anytime that you start boasting, you start thinking, oh, I know what I'm doing, you gotta really watch it because that's when you're gonna slip up. But that little bit of sin that you let in your life ends up growing and turning into this whole thing and ends up ruining your whole life. Oh. No, go to the storm. Go to the storm. That's not the storm either. There it is. Well, it's okay. Well, come, it's okay. Where do I have to stand? Don't want to be over here. Okay, we're talking about the storm now. This was my senior year of high school, so this was like a lot of time had passed. Okay, and everything was semi-good. Okay, and my dad was a truck driver. And so one day, there was this really bad storm. Really bad, like rainstorm. And so here's his truck, and he's driving. And he says the wind was so strong, and the rain was coming down so hard that he couldn't see. He couldn't see anything. And it was just like this wall of water just coming at him. And so it was all he could do to just stop the truck. And he ended up going off the road. Go to the picture. This is a transformer. And so he stopped. His tires stopped about 10 feet in front of it. And that's where the tire stops. So think about how much more the truck sticks out over that. So it was only like 3 feet from hitting that. And the police and everybody said that if he would have hit that, there would have been nothing left. He would have just exploded, just disintegrated, just pooh. So the lesson for that is that storms will come. Storms will blow you off course. And you might be heading straight for destruction and you don't even know it because you can't even see it. But we serve the God who will stop you in your tracks. He will not let you go into destruction. And he stops you. And so when that happened, I mean, it was just so cool. It was just so like, the devil, really wants my daddy dead. He really wants that. And God is up there. God is just like, nope, you're going to stop right here. And it's really exciting when you think the devil's really trying to take me out. There must really be a reason, Okay, then go to the next one. Oh, and he calms the storm. Oh, yes. Okay, his third brush with death was the potassium incident. This was the summer of 2018. So I had just gotten pregnant with her, and I was really sick. I had a really hard time when I was pregnant with her. Daddy had to take me to the doctor to get fluids and everything. And I had just gotten over that. I was finally doing a little better, where I wasn't, thinking I was going to die of throwing up. And I was finally relaxing. I was outside with my dog. And I'm just, and my mom calls me, says, I have to get my dad to the hospital right now. His potassium is messed up. He's going to die. We have to go to the hospital right now. And I'm just like, all right. So I go to his house, and I tell him, okay, we have to go to the hospital. And he's giving me this speech that he is fine, that my mother is overreacting, but okay, we'll go just for her. And he drives himself to the hospital. And I'm telling him, I'm like, I should really drive. And he's like, no, I'm fine. So we get there. And the way the insurance is, they have this whole thing where if you go to ER, but it's not an actual emergency, they're not going to cover it. Okay, so he's trying to explain that to the hospital people. And they're like, well, sir, this really is an emergency. You do really need to be here. We're really going to, get you straightened out here. And so he was in the hospital for 3 days at that time. Go to the next one, babe. Oh, okay. And so when he was leaving, the doctors were saying, it's really great. It's really a miracle that you have not had any cardiac issues while you've been here. So with your potassium, if it's too low, it can cause problems. And if it's too high, it can cause problems. And it doesn't just make you have a heart attack. It causes sudden cardiac death, where your heart will just die. And that's actually how they execute someone. They inject them with potassium, and it just stops their heart. So that was pretty scary. And I was pregnant with her, and, I wanted my dad to meet my baby. It was a whole thing. And so when we were getting out of the car, later, after he'd gotten home, we were listening to one of our songs, and it said, "Did I create the rhythm your heart makes?" And that just hit me so hard. What, baby? I'm speaking. What? You want to tell me later? Okay. Sorry. Did I create the rhythm your heart makes? And that just hit me so hard. It was like that first time when he had died at the hospital and was down for 20 minutes. God created that rhythm in his heartbeat for it to stop for that time. And then when the storm happened and he almost hit the transformer, he planned that. His heart did not stop for that. And during this event with the potassium, he kept his heart rhythm going for that. And so then when it really was his time to die in September, God had made that too. And that was really hard for me to accept when he died. Then even now, I still get upset about it. And now that I'm in medical assistant school, I've learned some more stuff and some mistakes that I think they made, and that's really hard for me to accept it. But it's gone. But when I think about that God did create that rhythm of his heart. And I was pregnant with her when this happened, and I was just terrified that the stress was going to make me miscarry. But knowing that God created the rhythm of the heartbeat of my little tiny baby, that just gave me so much peace with that. He's not going to let that happen. Yeah. And my dad did hear her heartbeat with me. That was very exciting. Oh, that's what you were going to say? Yes. Kyle, go back to the one about the dry bones. We'll read that one. Yeah. He was so proud when because he had to take me to ER because I was throwing up so bad. And they were like, okay, I was like right at 10 weeks, and they were like, okay, we're going to try to hear the heartbeat, but it is pretty early, so if we can't find it, don't worry, it's okay, it doesn't mean that there's no heartbeat. And I was so scared. I was like, well, you're not going to find it, but the baby is dead, like there's nothing. And they found it, and I was like, what? Are you sure? Are you sure that's not mine? And they're like, no, honey, like that's the baby. And my dad was just so proud that he heard that. You know, he was the first one. And that's the other thing with the timeline. If he would have died sooner, he wouldn't have been able to do that with me, you know? And if he would have died later, then I wouldn't have had enough time to grieve before I had a newborn to take care of. So really, it was the best that it could have been. Okay, this is Ezekiel. I wanted to read this to you. Oh, I don't have the chapter. Oh, well. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you, and make flesh come upon you, and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. So we serve the God who can do this to dry bones. You know, this wasn't someone who had just died a minute ago who we could do CPR and save them. This was a dry bone, and he's starting over from the beginning. So if he can do that, he can certainly revive someone who's been down for 20 minutes. Yeah, it doesn't matter how spiritually dead you are. And you hath he quickened, who were dead in trespasses and sins. Even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Christ. By grace you are saved. And that was so true for how he was. And that's true for us. And, you know, and maybe that doesn't apply to us in here. But I'm sure we all have friends who are this way, who are dead in their sins and stuck in their addictions. And we serve the God of deliverance and of salvation. And so we're not going to stop praying for them. And so I think that's what we're going to do now for the rest of the time we have. We're just going to have some prayer time.